What follows are 12 entries in a journal dredged up by the fishing trawler Colette, somewhere in the Baltic Sea. The location of the events in question is currently unknown. Journal entry number 571. We arrived outside of the cavern entrance today. It is a steep descent into the belly of the world, steep enough to require ropes and harnesses to navigate. Our expedition numbers 13, perhaps an unwise denomination, but a necessary one for our endeavors. Myself, my 4 colleagues from the Archaeological Society, 2 representatives from the local populace of the forest, 2 professionally trained cave spelunkers, 1 chief advisor for the acquisition and transfer of relics, and 3 armed private security for the advisor. He and his muscle are not particularly friendly men, but you are bound to be saddled with a suit and his dogs on potentially world-changing digs like these. The locals are more apprehensive than the rest of us for tomorrow when we take our first steps, but it is difficult to identify what makes them nervous. They eagerly volunteered to assist us, but it seems that a shadow is hanging over their eagerness. Florence, my dearest friend among the expedition and fellow archaeologist, believes it to be some factor of the local mythology. There are innumerable whispers and legends of a genie living in the woods. A creature not unlike an angel or a demon, one of spiritual composition and capable of great or terrible deeds. Wonderful stories, but of course that was not what brought us to the cavern that waits patiently on the edge of our campsite. 9,000 years ago, a great ice sheet that once covered a vast portion of the land to the north melted under intense heat. The source and reason for the heat are still mostly unknown to us, but the ramifications are abundantly clear. The massive influx of water caused tremendous landslides from the spine of mountains that separated where the ice sheet once was and where we stand now. Entire swaths of land were swallowed in water, while others were coated in many feet of new terra firma. The entire topography of the region was changed forever, and presumably entire civilizations that called this place home were wiped out. That is why we are here. This cavern entrance, like the open maw of a snake, is a recent development in the local terrain. Based on recreations of what the area could have looked like before the ice sheet melted, this area would have been the ideal place for a town or a hunter's base of operations for the plains nearby. Our hopes are sky high. Journal entry number 572. 1 more day was spent outside of the cavern. Today, Russell and Leon gave each of us a training course on rappelling and cave safety. Boring stuff, but necessary. I was able to spend some time with Janine and Alphonse, our local guides. My French isn't what it once was, and my Arabic is worse, so the conversation was slow and stilted. Fortunately for me, they are very patient people. They confirm that the legends of the genie are why they are nervous but excited. According to them, jinn are similar to humans in the sense that they cover a wide range of morality. Find the right genie, and they can make your wildest dreams come true. Find the wrong one, and, well, that was where the conversation began to falter. It seems our proximity to the cavern made them apprehensive to speak ill of a genie. I do not believe their stories, but I am not foolish enough to discount their warnings entirely. As for the rest of the expedition, I have my doubts that they will pay any heed to the local cautions. Tomorrow is the day we descend. Journal entry number 573. It is not a cavern at all. The cave mouth was merely a depression of earth that led directly to the entranceway of a stone temple, still standing, buried beneath 9,000 years of upheaval and shifting of land. Our greatest hopes paled in comparison to a fully intact temple. My companions and I are overwhelmed with excitement. We were able to open the doors to the temple and make our way inside a massive central chamber which will serve as our base of operations. Alphonse and Janine are beside themselves. They see this temple as all but confirmation of a genie and are prepared to engage with one at any moment. I have not expressed this to my colleagues, but this holy place does give me pause. To be an archaeologist is to find the thin connecting threads that make up our past and bind them somehow into the tapestry of humankind. In the pursuit of such weaving, it is inevitable to come across threads that do not or will not be incorporated. Each of us has our own way of reasoning away those strays. I am in the narrow subset who does not immediately shy away from the supernatural or otherwise inexplicable. My colleagues have spent the day studying and testing the environment. Russell and Leon spent most of the day securing and tightening our ropes that lead back to the surface. The advisor for the acquisition of relics is just as beside himself as the locals, but all I see in his eyes are piles of gold. His armed guards have seemed devastatingly bored by the once-in-a-lifetime discovery. I will retire to my tent for the evening. I anticipate sleep to evade me tonight. Journal entry number 574. One of the armed security men is dead and another is missing. We spent all day exploring the temple, which is proving to be a massive complex. One of the advisor's bodyguards, I believe his name was Elaine, remained behind in camp. When we returned, we found something we could not explain. In the center of the chamber was Elaine, seated on a throne that was not there when we departed. Surrounding the throne were dozens of stone hands, clutching desperately at the man's body and holding him in place. His face was stricken with fear, and upon his head was a crown, only its sheer ridges and spikes were inverted and driven down into his skull. It was a coronation from hell. After struggling for an hour to free his poor body from the Iron Maiden throne, we realized that Nelson, one of the other guards, was gone. As of this writing, we have found no sign of him. Alphonse and Janine are of a mind to flee, and Russell and Leon are with them. Florence is determined to stay, as are the rest of my colleagues. Nathaniel, the advisor, is shaken, but still determined to extract every penny he can from the temple. The last bodyguard, Leonie, is terrified. I do not blame her. She would certainly leave if it did not mean penal backlash. The advisor's bodyguards are, after all, on loan from the prison system. She could not just walk away. Journal entry number 575. The temple doors are shut. We attempted to leave after discovering Nelson's body in a side chamber not far from the narthex. To say we discovered his body is perhaps being generous. We discovered items that served to identify him among a horrific pile of gore. He had been crushed to a pulp by a dozen statues, each of them depicting a nude maiden in the heat of passion. I believe Alphonse and Janine. We have stumbled into the resting place of a genie and one of great evil. For 9,000 years his temple has sat idle and unworshipped. Now 13 fools are laid before him. We have placed ourselves upon the offering plate, and he is extracting his due. Nathaniel is insisting we press on. Russell and Leon refuse to leave camp, even in the shadow of Elaine's death throne. Florence, Zeke, Homer, and Rosemary, my archaeologist fellows, are devastated. This is beyond our comfort. I grieve for Leonie most of all. The woman is petrified, moved from prison to prison with no control, no desire, no willingness. I am terrified, but I will not die lying down. Alphonse and Janine are our only hope now. I will learn everything I can about the genie. Journal entry number 576. The central mechanism of most jinn who make their presence known to humans is one of wish fulfillment. Bring your soul before them, and they will grant your most precious cravings and ambitions. If the genie is one of honest and altruistic motives, your wish will come to fruition. If, however, they are not, we are in the presence of a genie who is malevolent. Your wish is still granted, but never in the way you want. Your cravings become your death, your ambitions become your undoing. I began to question what Elaine or Nelson's wishes were, but Janine silenced me immediately. To discuss the intricacies of the work of a genie is the quickest way to anger him. As if to confirm their suspicions, a breeze gusted through the narthex. The genie provides a warning. My last question for Alphonse and Janine was the most important one. How do you stop a genie? The genie stops when his appetite is sated. He will grant wishes and see them through to their grim conclusion until the fear of him settles into the land. There is no way to stop a hungry genie. Journal entry number 577. I saw the beast as it granted Nathaniel's wish. The rest of the camp had settled in for the night, and I was on watch. A side chamber door creaked open, and a whisper of smoke found its way under the advisor's tent. The man shambled out, following the smoke like a dog. I watched as Leonie followed him out of the tent, stood with a grim uncertainty, and then turned back. She caught my eye and shook her head. I do not lament her inaction. I did nothing to rush to his aid either. My curiosity was too much to leave it alone, however. I peered through the chamber door, and I saw him. Tangles of smoke seeped off of a flesh-like body larger than any human. His skin was a mottled white and black, stretched impossibly tight over a collection of bones that did not match, but were eerily similar to the human body. Sharp ribs at odd angles filled a long torso below spiked shoulders, piercing in alternate directions, crowned with a large ribbed skull atop a shredded neck of tendrils of skin. His mouth was wide and closer to that of a tiger than a man's. Sharp fangs stuck up and down from the maw as it hung open slightly, with a long rough tongue moving frantically inside. A hand, four-fingered and dripping with jewels and oil, hovered idly over Nathaniel's head. The genie mumbled to the advisor in a voice that was inscrutable to me. It sounded harsh and unnatural, like metal scraping on metal. The chamber echoed with the sound. It made me nauseous and dizzy. Nathaniel was kneeling before the genie and did not speak, but from his skull I saw words materialize in the swirling smoke. Among them were the words abundance, wealth, riches. The genie smiled and nodded his corrugated head. Nathaniel's body began to convulse as if he had fallen victim to an epileptic fit. With each shake I heard the rattle of coins. Finally he fell to his side and twisted over in pain. He rolled over and faced the door. I watched as his stomach swelled to an unbelievable size and things began to give. I saw parts of his chest collapse, and gems began to tumble out of his mouth. Eventually his eyes were pushed free from his skull to make way for more treasure to tumble free from what had become a human lockbox. Coins cut their way free from his throat in a flood of viscera. Before I could turn away, I saw his stomach burst open from the pressure and unveil an immeasurable fortune. Only his waist and legs remained, and even they spit gemstones from their bloody exit. The genie was gone, and with it any hope I had of escaping this place. Journal entry number 578. My comrades and I decided to venture as far into the temple as we could. We are resigned to death, but at the very least we might document what we found here. Alphonse and Janine came with us, while Leonie, Russell, and Leon remained at camp. Janine and Alphonse and I were the only ones that returned. Long winding tunnels, branching off from the chamber in which we found the remains of Nelson, led to a room with a baptismal font, and further in, a massive chamber with an altar. We lost Homer in the baptismal room. He stayed behind with Rosemary to study it. I lost Florence and Zeke in the altar room. It seems the genie does not like it when you prod. Zeke was an anxious man, never quite comfortable around his fellows. I didn't appreciate just how much it impacted him until I saw what his wish had been. To be invisible. To not be seen by other humans, free to do his work in peace. The genie removed all of his outer coverings, his skin and flesh, so that only his organs were exposed. They held their form for a few minutes, but the natural air rapidly sucked the life from them. As they shriveled and blackened, they crumbled over as his invisible body fell to the ground. Florence was worthy of more respect among her peers than she had ever received. Being a woman in our field was not always easy. Her wish must have been informed by such an experience. I wept as I watched her body reduced to the bindings and pages of a large tome. Her skin the parchment, her blood the ink, her organs shredded and used as binding. Etched on the cover was her name and a flourishing title of her incomparable place among archaeologists. The grinding, hateful voice of the genie rattled through the room. I do not know why he taunts me so, taking everyone but me. As we returned to the camp, we found Homer and Rosemary. Homer was eager to start a family one day. His body was split open as a dozen malformed human golems had pried their way free. Most of them were dead, but a few still cried out in agony as their unnatural life fled from their liquefying bodies. I do not know what Rosemary's wish was. Resting on the edge of the baptismal font was a delicate glass case secured with a gilded lock and covered in roses. Within the case was Rosemary's head. The rest of her body was nowhere to be seen. Alphonse and Janine are overwhelmed. I believe I am in shock currently. I am numb and cold. I continue to write because I do not know what else to do. If you find this, please leave this place before you are locked within its walls. Journal entry number 579. Leon is gone. We can only assume the worst, but there's no sign of his body. Hours after Leon vanished, Russell took his own life. There are only 4 of us now. Myself, Alphonse, Janine, and Leonie. The genie was quiet today. Journal entry number 580. The genie entered the narthex for the first time today. He does not fear us. There is no reason to fear us. The scraping sound of his voice still rings in my ears. I desperately tried to pull Leonie away from him, but to no avail. The tendrils of his smoke tied me up and bludgeoned me against the wall. He made sure to leave me conscious, however. She only wanted to be free. She only wanted to live outside the harsh confines she had spent so much of her life within. The genie obliged. What is more free than a gust of wind? She was lifted into the air, gently and slowly. Then, piece by piece, her body separated into vapor-thin shreds and flew through the air until eventually passing through the closed temple doors. Be free, Leonie. Journal entry number 581. Alphonse has not given up entirely. Janine is another story. She cries to herself and believes this to be hopeless. I tend to agree. I see no way out of our situation. Alphonse will not divulge his plan for fear of the genie overhearing it. He insists, however, that there is a chance. My wish is all he says. My wish. Journal entry number 582. Alphonse was a devout, loving man. I could not imagine what a man like him would wish for deep down. Janine discovered what it was this morning. Outside of our tents, curled up in the center of the cold stone floor, was an amulet. It was still warm from the life that had been Alphonse. Inside the amulet was an icon made of bone. It meant nothing to me, but Janine smiled and held the amulet close. She says that he did it. The mesmerizing power of the genie is held at bay by the icon that Alphonse had become, making it possible to lie to him about your wish or lack thereof. Nothing can undo a genie like a human who wishes for nothing. It robs them of their power. It illustrates just how ardent Alphonse was. Even beneath the compelling spell of the genie, his wish was to become a symbol of his faith. I am thankful for him. It could not have been me. Journal entry number 583. Janine will use the amulet. It only seems right. This temple would have remained shut and hidden away if not for me and my comrades. If anyone should leave this place, it should be her. I hear the grating metal voice of the genie. I can feel the caress of his smoke around my ankles. He is close. It is finally my turn. My wish will be fulfilled. My wish. He will bring me to it. To see a part of the world that no one has ever seen before. Open my eyes, Genie. Bring me to it. Bring me my wish.